Well, with school starting all over at least the US, I thought the dolls might like a school lunch tray. Stay tuned and see how fun and easy this is to make. All right, I thought we'd start by looking at the pattern pieces. These are the pattern pieces you'll cut either from the PDF file, and be sure and check the blog post not only for the link for these, but also I've got some extra notes on there. I'm going to put extra notes on the blog post about these, but unfortunately I couldn't get this on to any less than 3 sheets of paper. So you're going to have either 3 PNGs or 3 PDF pages to cut from medium weight cardstock. What we've got these rectangles. These are your bottom. We have these pieces here. This is a smaller size of this cutout shape. This is the same size as the bottom, and this is basically the tray. And then there's 2 pieces this size that are slightly bigger, and they are the top of the tray. So we're going to start like we do a lot of times. I forgot to get out any wax paper, so let me get a sheet of wax paper. I like to work on wax paper. We're going to glue these together in sets. You're going to have, when you get done, you'll have a stack of 2 solid pieces. There are, I believe, 5 of these mid-size or middle pieces, and then there are 2 of the big ones. So I'm going to show you 2 of them, and then I'll do these 2 on camera, and then I'll do the rest off camera, because this is going to take me a while to glue. I'm only going to do about 2 layers. Even on this one, I'm going to do 2 layers, 2 sets of 2, and then I'll glue those together with the last one. Just because getting too thick of a stack tends to cause problems. Now this one, we are actually going to use the glue straight out of the bottle, because we're going to need a lot. And I tried putting it on with a toothpick, or whatever you call a toothpick, cocktail stick, I think, in some places, and it just didn't work. So I'm putting on not a whole lot of glue, and work on wax paper so that it's easier to clean up, because you are going to get glue out. Now, I've been working on this pattern for a couple of weeks, so it's taken me a little longer to get this one put together. So where do you get the pattern? You get the pattern by going to the blog post for today's video. There's a link in the first paragraph or 2 that will take you to a Google Drive download file that will allow you to download, like I said, the PNGs to use with your cutting machine, as well as a PDF file that has the pages for to cut by hand. And there's also a text file that will tell you what little tricks and tips and sizing information for your Cricut or your Silhouette or whatever your machine is. I want to have to glue closer to the edges on this. Now, one thing, we are going to cover this time. This one is going together a little different than some of the ones we've done in the past. One thing that irritated me this morning when I cut this out was if you're using a Cricut, I don't know if Silhouette does the same thing, but when you take the PNG in, it's going to resize your PNG. And I talk about that on that text file. You will need to make sure it's sized correctly for cutting out. Otherwise, it's going to tell you, like it did mine, that it's too big for the mat. And it's not. It'll fit the mat. It just, for whatever reason, Cricut resizes these huge. So I am going to, let's talk a little bit more, and then I'll turn the camera off. So I cut out a medium weight cardstock. That way we can make it any color we want. And I find that medium weight, besides that, on this one, we're actually going to cover this with another layer after it's done. But acrylic paint tends to be more light fast than colored cardstock. And because of the step after we assemble this one, it wouldn't do any good to do it out of a color. So I am going to turn the camera off. I'm going to get all these glued. When I come back, I will have 3 stacks of one stack of each of the sizes, and we will be ready to assemble the next step. So I'll be back then. All right, here are all 3 units now. These 2 are each 2 layers thick, and this one is 5, so it's much more substantial. Now, it's really important the order we put these together in, because it'll be much easier if you do it this way. We're going to assemble these 2 together first. So to do that, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put this bigger one, and this is the bigger one. That's how you'll know which is which, besides the fact this has more layers to it. So let's talk a little more about the rules of using this. So the pattern is free to download, either for hand cutting or for doing it on a cutting machine. And the pattern, you can make as many of these as you want, and I don't care what you do with the finished trays once you use them. You can sell them on Etsy if you want to, or whatever. All I ask is that you don't share or sell my pattern, because that's what takes me a long time. And by you guys, you know, coming to the blog post and stuff, that's the only compensation I get for that. So I need you guys to follow the rules, and then everything is cool. Then I can still keep giving you these things for free. Now, line it up as best you can. And I do suggest putting a weight on this. I'm going to put my ruler on top of it, and then I'm going to put, probably there's this little speaker on top of that. That way it will hold this flat while this glue gets set up a bit. So when this is set up enough that I'm comfortable that it won't move around, I'll come back and we'll add this bigger piece to it, and then this will need to dry completely before we go to the next step. So I'll see you when this gets set up a bit. All right, that glue is set up enough that this is not going to come apart. So now I'm going to run another thin bead of glue. And these beads of glue I'm running are not, there's not a lot of glue. I'm trying to spread it pretty thin so that it doesn't cause any issues with the paper. All right, now we're going to add that last part, that top edge, making sure that we have it turned the right direction. And this should all line up. I'm trying to wipe any huge lumps of glue out of there. And let's see if I can pick it up and show you. See, that piece is just a little bit bigger. Hopefully the camera's picking it up. A little bit bigger. And now I'm going to put a weight on this for a while, for about a half hour or so, just to make sure this stays flat for a while. Then I'm going to take the weight off, and I want this to air dry for at least a few hours, preferably overnight, because we want this glue to be completely dry before we go to our next step, which will trap the glue inside. And if it's not dry, it could cause problems. So when I am confident that this is completely dry, I will come back and we will go to the next step. All right, my tray has dried overnight, and you could go on to painting this at this point, but I'm going to do another step. I want to meld these layers together more, and I also want to strengthen this a bit. And to do that, what I've got is I've got some matte Mod Podge. I'm going to get a clean container. And I'm going to put some of this out on here. I'm going to find another almost empty bottle of Mod Podge. You could use any sheen of Mod Podge. I'm using matte because I need to use up some bottles of it. And I have white tissue paper. This is the tissue paper. You see me use this a lot. This is the stuff you buy over by the gift wrap and the gift bags. And I'm going to start on the bottom. I recommend you do also. That way you can practice this on the bottom. So if you don't like how it looks, you don't have to continue up on the top. tear some pieces. But what I want to do is be sure you clean your brush really well after this, and I might have to go get more before I can get very far. Brush down some. I'm going to go get more Mod Podge. I'll be right back. All right, that's a little better. Another bottle that's almost empty. I think I had 3 or 4 almost empty bottles in my box of where I keep that kind of stuff. Okay. Try to keep these as smooth as you can, but if there's some wrinkles, don't worry about it. If you have a spot like that, tear that off. You don't want that on this. So by wrapping this kind of around those edges, you'll just be gluing those together another way and covering up those areas where the seams are. That way, number one, it'll be more durable. But also it will just look more like a single piece of something rather than looking like it's made of layers of cardstock. So I am going to continue. I'm going to put a single-ish layer of this all over the bottom. Once that's dry, I'll come back and we'll tackle the top side. So I'll be back in a bit. All right, this is dried, so now we can turn it over. Now the bottom may do a little warping, but I think once we do the second side, it will be fine. And this step, like I said, it's totally optional. You don't have to do this. I just wanted this to be stronger, and I wanted to kind of blend those edges better. So I am going to continue. I'm going to cover the top of this and go down over these edges around that little blip. And when I have this completely covered and dry, I'll come back and we can paint this. So I'll see you then. All right, my Mod Podge is dry, so now it's time to paint our lunch trays. And I chose this pretty Laguna color. It's kind of a turquoisey aqua color. The beauty of doing a project like this, lunch trays come in all colors. It doesn't have to be any specific color. You could make a bunch of them and make them all different colors. You could make them your favorite color. I never get to use this color, so I thought it would be fun to use this one. So I am going to put a coat of paint on here. Now this is kind of a translucent color, so I'm going to need multiple coats. That's okay. After about 2 or 3 coats, it's going to look really good. Be sure you get down in all those corners. And I'm going to do the front and the back. When I have a nice even colored coat, I will come back and we will go on to finishing these up. Oh, and I don't think I mentioned what I'm working on here. This is a layer of wax paper on the bottom. This is a parchment square. I get them at Dollar Tree. They come a whole bunch of them for $1.25. They are super useful, and the thing I like about them, they are more non-stick than anything else I have purchased. They're more non-stick than regular parchment paper in my experience. So if you have a Dollar Tree nearby, I would recommend these for working on if you're doing things that are messy or sticky like our Mod Podge was. So I'm going to give this a coat of paint. I am going to do my trick. I think I've shared on this channel before. I use a wet wipe. This is just a wet wipe. Wrap it around my brush when I'm done painting, and I can pull it out and use it again multiple times during the day. It will keep my brush and the paint in it nice and workable, and that way I don't have to stop and wash my paintbrush after every coat of paint. which not only wastes paint, but unless you have a lot of brushes, you end up coming back with a wet brush, which can dilute your paint. So when this has a nice coat of paint that is opaque and the color I want it, I will come back and we'll finish this up. All right, my paint has dried overnight, so now I am going to take some of that same matte Mod Podge and go over both sides of my tray with very, very thin coats of Mod Podge. Don't go too thick or it has a bad habit of staying sticky even on paper. I find if I go nice and thin, it doesn't get as sticky, it doesn't remain as sticky. So I'm going to do the front and the back. Then I'll come back and we'll take a look at this. I'm going to look through my stash of doll food I have made over the last couple of years and make up the doll a school lunch. So I'll see you when this Mod Podge is dry on both sides and I have some lunch on here. All right, my lunch tray has 2 coats of matte Mod Podge. It gives it just the slightest bit of shine like a real lunch tray would have. So let's load this up with some lunch. I thought the dolls might like some corn dogs today, a side salad, a piece of cake, some potato chips, and a bottle of juice. Now, with the exception of the bottle of juice, these are all foods that there are tutorials for on the channel. So if you want to see how to make these, be sure and check the channel foods playlist. Or I might, if I remember, I might try to link all of these foods in the blog post for you too, just have a direct link. And this juice bottle, if I remember correctly, these are bubbles that I got in the party section somewhere. I think Dollar Tree, but possibly someplace like Party City. But I love how this turned out. Now this would be either a fun piece for play, for pretend, or just kind of a fun way to display some of your doll foods you've made. You could glue them down and have a display piece. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Be sure and hop over to the blog post. There'll be not only photos of this as I put it together, and I always think of things I forgot to say while I am editing, so those will be in the blog post, as well as the pictures as I went along. And of course the link to download the pattern to make your own lunch tray. So if you enjoyed today's video, be sure and hit that thumbs up button and leave me a comment. What kinds of things would you like to see in future videos? If you enjoy my content and you haven't subscribed, I encourage you, hit that subscription button and the notification bell so you know when I put up a new video. Thank you very, very much for watching today, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.